month's theme has been based on 3 modes that we are operating in. And we have gone this whole month in great detail in explaining how to identify these 3 different modes of these functions of operating. First was surviving, where life happens to me. And then there's striving, where life happens by me, gotta make it happen. And then there's thriving. That's when life happens through me and to me, and that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. But today we're going to really talk about, are you willing to accept the impossible? So that's, everything's been perfect. The readings, everything that goes with this, just been lovely. Sometimes we go in and out. In fact, most of the time we go in and out of all 3 of these modes of operating. You know, it's really, I think, just what having this human experience, our divine self is always thriving. But I think as humans, we go in and out of all 3. Sometimes it feels like we're just surviving, hanging on. And then we're striving, making things happen. And then when we're thriving, that's when things really, that's when we open up the floodgates of good, because they come to us. So we go in and out of it. But, you know, the more that we become aware, the more that we are open to that state, that mode of operating that is thriving, when things happen through us and to us without doing anything. Set the intention, which we're going to talk about, and life just gives it to us. So thriving is being the vehicle through which God, the divine creator, expresses in and through each and every one of us and makes that which looks impossible, possible. Because we know in God all things are possible. So to thrive is to fully express our potential. Because you know that we all have like this limitless potential. You know this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Not everybody knows this. Okay, then this talk is for you today. Because when we do, we are living in a state of fulfillment. We're living in a state of joy. We're living in a state of peace and happiness. And that's really where we want to be, isn't it? I know I do. I know I do. Yeah. So once we rise out of our striving strategies, which I did on the 2nd weekend or the 3rd week of one of them, in June, there's 5 weeks in June. And once we experienced the freedom last week of true surrender, that was good. Last week we really discussed the letting go and the letting God aspect, to let that go through, as we've discussed in those last 3 weeks. Then we're ready. When we've really released, when we've really let go and we've really let God, then we get ready to be in that place of creating that which previously seemed impossible. So remembering that which seems impossible is really just a belief. It really is just a belief. You ever just manifest something that you thought was impossible to do in your whole life? And then afterwards you say, wow, that was a miracle. Well, maybe, since there are no miracles in God, right? It's just the natural action, the flow of divinity is natural, so there are no miracles. So maybe this, all things are possible to us, So the question this morning is, are you willing to accept the possibility that the impossible just might be possible?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right. Yes.
Absolutely.
I am. So we often quote scripture that says, with God, all things are possible. But do we really, really believe that?
Yes.
You know, we say a lot of scripture quotes or a lot of affirmations. That's why Patty's workshop is going to be phenomenal, because you're going to get one that's going to change your whole life forever. Money back guarantee. Hey, I'm serious. I'm serious. I didn't give you a time frame now because divine right order. And divine right order might take a little bit. But are you willing then to say and mean the words, with God, all things are possible, or better yet, through God, all things are possible? But the betterest, the really great thing to say is, as God, all things are possible. As God, all things are possible. As creations of God, of the divine, all things are possible for us. That's powerful. That is really powerful. So that is being willing to accept the possibility that is actually the truth of each and everyone's being. It is the truth. Or would you be like the disbelieving priest who was stopped by a police officer for speeding? The police officer immediately smelled alcohol on this man's breath and noticed an open bottle of wine on the floor of his car. He said, "Sir, have you been drinking?" And the priest replied, "Just water, officer." "Then why do I smell wine?" the officer asks. And the minister looked down at the bottle with utter disbelief and said, "Good Lord, he's done it again." Henry Ford once said, I like this quote, "I am looking for a lot of men who have an infinite capacity to not know what can't be done." I'll repeat that again. I love this one. So in the past few weeks, we've been preparing to have an infinite capacity within us to not know what can't be done. You get that? That's really powerful. So last week we did hit upon 3 points in surrendering. The first was, life does not turn out the way it should. Talked about that in length. Life does not turn out the way it shouldn't. Life simply turns out the way it turns out. Life happens, okay? But there's a lot of room for choice in there, don't get nervous. But life happens. Life happens. It turns out the way, this is surrender now, it happens the way it happens. We discussed that accepting that you cannot control the outcome is not the end, because we really can't control the outcome. We can set our intentions, we can be specific, but we don't outline the way it shows up. Not if we're really practicing these spiritual truths that we teach and that we live by. In fact, the opposite. It's not the end, it's the opposite. It's the point of pure potentiality. This is the consciousness of pure consciousness, this point. When we let go and we let God, that's when all things become possible in our lives. We realize that we can't control the end anyway, because we're so conditioned and attached to control our lives. So when we let go, what does let go and let God mean? Which we discussed. It means let go of the control. Let go of the control. The minute we let go, that's when we're in the flow of life that everyone talks about, the flow of life. So I say step up and step out. That's what happens when we let go. We step up and we step out. We're out of that box of confinement of control. The work we've done in the previous weeks then leads us up today, and we're not doing next week because we're going to do a whole different topic, but why it is so important to do all of the things that we've been speaking about that leads us to this place of thriving. Why couldn't we, as many people say when they first get into these teachings, well, why couldn't we just do it right away? Why do we have to wait like a whole month for this? Because the universe, the universal law works through its own divine law, which, to use Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, says, takes the direct impress of our thoughts and acts upon it. What we feel and what we think is what we experience in life. How it's going to look, we don't usually know. But how it's going to feel, that's what we can really focus our attention on. How am I going to feel when I manifest what I want in my life? Our job is to give the law, which we talk about all the time, as you knew. It's the law of attraction, the law of cause and effect, all these immutable laws which are part of God. It's the thing that does. It's the thing that does. Our job is to give this law clear direction So the work of the past few weeks has been like clearing the forest so that we can have a clear pathway to create what seems impossible. Because I know that we say to ourselves, I've said it in the past, now I'm just going with God, all things are possible. So with me, all things are possible. So when we move into our 24/7 spiritual home, you'll know. Because all things are possible. How is it going to happen? Have no idea. Why? Because I'm not outlining. But the clear intention, the clear statement is right there. So that's what we do for ourselves in our lives. So we could say in the last few weeks then that we have laid the foundation of consciousness. Laid the foundation from which we have the capacity to move into the seemingly impossible. And there is nothing impossible. It's just a belief that we've cultivated. This idea makes me think of the words of the master teacher Jesus, when he said, as part of what has now become known as the Sermon on the Mount, he said this: anyone who hears my words and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. And the rains descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. But whomever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. That's from Matthew chapter 7. So in Science of Mind, in our Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes refers to this passage of Matthew in a metaphysical translation, and this is what he came up with. The wise man builds his house on the solid rock of truth. I wanted to bring in my rock of truth. I have by my front door, as you enter, it's turned into a little altar there. Ganesha's there, and I have my food dogs there, and all this. But I have this rock that says truth, because I want to make it clear to the universe that nothing enters this space except truth. So it's really, really important to understand capital T, truth. So the wise man, this is Ernest Holmes' interpretation, builds his house on the solid rock of truth, which means in God all things are possible, and not on the shifting sands of instability. The foolish man, living only in sense perception, which is our striving strategy, has no measure for the reality and builds his homes on false opinions and erroneous concepts. The vicissitudes of fortune, he writes, upset his frail building. The storms of experience tear down the walls. While the edifice falls about him in ruins, truth alone endures to eternal day. And we've talked about this I think in our roots class, but truth, because we're studying Emerson now, but truth is truth is truth. In every religion, its truth is the same. God is love. We are eternal beings. So this kind of building our lives and our values and our faith on the fact that these spiritual truths do not change, cannot be altered by any one of us. It's truth. It's a solid rock to build our lives on. So when life happens, and it does, remember, it happens, and there are some things we can't control, life just happens, we're at least standing, rooted, anchored in that place of a solid foundation of truth. So we always have within us that truth. So anchor into that truth, because it is invaluable. So I want to set the tone for our work this morning by sharing an illustration. I've talked about this before. This is from Tracy Goss's book, The Last Word on Power. But in this book, that has kind of influenced this whole series of talks, it inspires. In the book she shares, now this story I've said before, but it's so good It's about the movie Rudy, that I know most of us might have seen. Great movie. Which tells the story, this is perfect for this talk, of a blue-collared youth growing up in a steel mill town who creates an impossible future for himself. We first see Daniel Rudinger as an eager 10-year-old making a solemn declaration. Someday I will play football for the University of Notre Dame. In the eyes of most people, however, Rudy is an unlikely candidate for a number of reasons. First, he's far too small physically to match anyone's conventional image of a football player. Next, he just doesn't have that innate athletic ability despite, it doesn't make a difference, despite the beliefs of others, he trains and he works out incessantly. So, I love this. Emma Curtis Hopkins is famous for naysayers. It's like all the naysayers, they're always going to be around you when you have a dream that looks impossible. Don't listen to the naysayers. Listen to your intelligent heart. Listen to that. That will pull you into the greater vision of overcoming that which looks impossible. Naysayers, step back. That's what you say in your mind. Naysayers, step back. Out of my life. So, continue with Rudy. Rudy, they say he's not smart enough to get into Notre Dame. And in fact, it takes him 2 years of determination and dedication at a community college and 3 rejections from Notre Dame before his transfer to the school is accepted. Doesn't give up. They say he isn't rich enough and that he should just work in the local steel mill like the rest of his family. And that's going to be his reality, and that's with a small r. When we capitalize it, that's true. He doesn't have enough money for college. So he works at the mill for 4 consecutive years and saves up enough money to pay for his tuition. Rudy was a young man who did not know what couldn't be done. Isn't that great? Nothing to stop it because he did not know what could not be done. After he enters Notre Dame, he joins the walk-on practice squad. Battered and bruised daily by the varsity linemen, he's used basically as a human dummy that they can tackle. But he holds on to his dream. He is resolved by this point that his impossible dream involves running into the playing field with the team, but not actually playing. Let go. You see, he had let go of his dream of how it should turn out. And that's what we talked about last week, how we think things should turn out. When we let go of those shoulds, we really open up a floodgate of possibilities. So this is what he did. Last week we talked about releasing the idea of how things should and should not be. How we have to let go of thinking that we control the outcome, because we really don't control it. We control ourselves, we control our responses, we control our reactions, we control our thinking, we control everything within ourselves. But as I said before, stuff in life happens. So we are specific of our intention, just like Rudy, and we let the law of cause and effect, do the outlining. Does a much better job than we could. So Rudy's guts, good nature, and raw determination impressed many of the people who meet him, including the legendary Notre Dame coach, whose name is Ara Parsegian. Parsegian. I'm just going to call him Ara. So the coach Ara, who I'm very into sports, so I know the name. In fact, I was playing, my sister's here. She put together this little basketball net thing that I bought for my grandson. I have 2-year-olds. And they're throwing it in, and they're throwing the ball in, because it's like this big, you can raise it up. And I kept saying, touchdown! touchdown, touchdown. Don't listen to Grandma. She's got the wrong. So anyway, the point is, they didn't care.
Oh, that's too funny.
As long as you clap, right? But this is about Rudy too. Rudy then, so Parsiganian retires before he can fulfill his promise to Rudy that he can dress and be in one of the games. He can actually dress up and go on the field. You know, whether he's going to play or not was still up in the air. But he leaves before this happened. So as he goes back to school, he sees that his name is not on the roster of players. And this really, this had Rudy hit bottom. He really felt deflated. For the first time in his whole dream, he feels on the brink of defeat, ready to throw in the towel. You might liken this to maybe something that you did, and quit. Okay, so he hadn't really released the idea of how it should turn out. He hadn't really, and that's a hard one for all of us, because we set an intention and we have an idea of how we think it should turn out. And it doesn't always turn out that way. But it can turn out a whole different way that could be a whole lot better. But his friends point out to him how much he has accomplished. How much he's, despite the fact that he didn't make his goal to play football for Notre Dame. One, this is what they're telling him, he's set to graduate from one of the most prestigious universities in the country, despite his blue-collar background. He's made it on one of the All-American teams despite his size and his lack of athletic prowess, and his determination has become an inspiration for his teammates and his friends. So Rudy's disappointment takes him deeper into the place of accepting that life does not always turn out the way it should. It just turns out the way it does. And yet, the dream is still worth pursuing, and that's the important part to remember. The dream is still worth pursuing. He decides to return to practice, to finish out the year, doing his job 100%, being a Notre Dame football player, and knowing that his impossible dream is not going to happen. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, but he's going to do it anyway. He continues. When he returns to the team, he finds his name is on the players list. And that's kind of like a little universal conspiring going on, because the law of attraction is always working, whether we're aware of it or not. So he dresses for the game and stands on the sidelines for the entire game. Then the truly impossible happened. With less than a minute to play, and under pressure from the team, the coach allows the new coach allows him to step in and to play. In the last seconds of the game, Rudy sacks the opposing quarterback, and the team carries him off the field on their shoulders. And this film, Rudy, is based on events that actually took place. It's a real story. And Notre Dame football team has never carried anyone else on their shoulders off the field after that. And that was nearly 30 years, if it's not 30 now, 30 years ago. You may or may not think that Rudy's goal was meaningful, but that's not the point. The point is that his life provides a dramatic example of someone who didn't know what couldn't be done. Didn't know. And we know this, we've seen this in inventors, or, I mean, if we could quote all the inventors that didn't listen to the naysayers and went ahead and broke the barrier, and Olympic athletes that's never been done before. And so they raised the bar. And he did what we all must do if we're going to move into what we call the impossible. After we do our groundwork and make a very strong declaration, a strong intention of what it is that we want to do or manifest, a declaration of that which seems at times, because you don't know how it's going to happen, and that's not up to us, we set the intention and let the law do the hows and the whats. So it's a declaration of the seemingly impossible. Having made this declaration, Rudy had the power to take a stand for what he believed in, to stay in action regardless of the circumstances. Mary Morrissey in our Prosperity Plus class talks about, circumstances are just the events and the happenings around us that we happen to be standing in at the moment. So those are effects. Those are not the cause. Those are the effects. To stay in action and regardless of circumstances, to move the possibility that he declared into a reality without forcing it. Right? Divine right order, it took place. With this kind of power, the kind of power that is not encumbered by habitual ways of thinking of the past, he was now capable of handling everything life threw at him. Our next step in thriving is to make a declaration that brings forth a future through you. The moment it is spoken. The moment it is spoken, the law is acting upon it. And the law is invisible. God is invisible. We don't see it, but it's there. Some creative force of glorious energy that has created each and every one of us. And so the minute we speak it, the law gives it back to us. And sometimes we're speaking it unconsciously, so we're not aware of what we're creating. That's why the awareness part, which is why you're here, that's why that awareness part is key. It's key. It's the only way we can get to the subconscious anyway, through our awareness. A judge has the authority to sentence a convicted criminal. So we operate in the area of where we have authority, okay? A minister has the authority to officiate a wedding. An employer has the authority to hire or fire someone. So then the question becomes, so who has authority in your arena? Your arena of life. Who has authority? You. You have authority. Other people do not have authority in your life. You might give it to them, but they really and truly, absolutely do not. You have complete authority with regard to what you say is possible and is not possible in your future. And only you get to decide that. No one gets to decide that for you. You might give your power away, but you're not giving yourself away. You can't. Those are the naysayers. While this may seem obvious, it is extremely important to understand that in the past, most of us have not taken this authority as a function of our striving strategies and our refusal to completely surrender, to let go and let God, when we stay attached. We have given away our power to determine what is possible and what is not. We have given over the power to the past and to our logic. That's our left brain. Remember, the right brain is pure potentiality because it's pure consciousness. Prior to now, this is important. Prior to now, what is possible in the future has always been determined by what has been possible so far. And that is where Ernest Holmes talks about principle is not bound by precedent. So just because something happened and always happened and is happening for generations in this way, doesn't mean that it has to stay that way for you. You can change anything. You have that power within you. You are creative forces. But we have to believe that we are creative forces, that this power is within us. It is our divine essence, ourselves, the strength, the truth of who we are. So we might have been unwilling to accept the impossible because we erroneously, maybe, believe that only what I can logically figure out can take place. And again, that is left brain thinking, which is very helpful. But it can be it can bind us. No freedom, bondage. No freedom when you're controlled by the way things should be. And so to move into thriving, which is where we all want to be, we all want to thrive, we all want to have joy, we all want to have peace in our lives. To create that which seems impossible, to release ourselves from the past and from the notion that we only achieve what we can logically figure out how to achieve, is accomplished by making 3 specific declarations, which bring into existence a unique realm of possibility, that which we might not have believed was possible before. Let go of what we think is possible. All things are possible. That's your affirmation right there. All things are possible in my life. I claim it, I know it, I accept it right now. So I'd like you, I'm going to say them and I'd like you to repeat them then after me. So the first declaration, we have 3 of them. I declare the possibility that what is possible is what I say is possible. So I'm going to break it down for you and repeat it after me. I declare the possibility.
I declare the possibility.
What is possible,
is
what I say is possible.
What I say is possible.
Second declaration. I declare this possibility.
I declare this possibility.
Who I am.
Who I am
Is the stand I take.
is the stand I take.
Third declaration. I take this stand.
I take this stand.
There is no fixed way that things should or should not be.
There is no fixed way that things should or should not be.
They're just the way they are.
They're just the way they are.
So declaration 1, I'm going to go over this really briefly because I don't want to keep you here all day. So I declare the possibility that what is possible is what I say is possible. With this declaration, you reclaim for yourself the power to determine what is possible in the future that you might have formerly taken for granted before, not thinking you could ever experience that. Once you begin to operate from this declaration, the future is invented because you're creating it. What you say is possible determines what is possible. What you say verbally, that tone. The universe is all about, as Stephen says, universe, one tone. It's all about that tone of speaking. Your reactions and the results that they produce are a reflection of the possibility you declare. You declare. So, declaration number 2. I declare this possibility, who I am is the stand I take. Through this statement, you establish a new way of being. The phrase, who I am, refers to the way you are being up until now. The way you have been being has been about, possibly, surviving and striving. This declaration replaces the old way of being and makes room for a new one. All right? We're going to make room. We're energy beings. We let go of the old stuff to make room for the new. When you commit to an impossible future, you are taking a stand. By taking a stand, you are committing yourself to continuously act consistent with the possibility that you declared. From this moment, the declaration is spoken, regardless of what the circumstances are around you. It doesn't make a difference. Number 3, I take this stand. There is no fixed way that things should or should not be. They just are. This declaration gives you the freedom to move ahead, to create your impossible future, even when things don't turn out the way they should turn out, the way you expect them to turn out. Most of the time, they don't. They can turn out even better. I found that out. They turn out even better when we really pay attention to the universal guidance. God is always guiding us. When we really develop that relationship within, and things can turn out a whole lot better than we think they are going to. So it looks impossible. It looks impossible. I got a mortgage. This is... God is good. Anyway, I want to cut this short because it's getting too long. So making these declarations of possibilities is the first step in allowing something to move forward from existing as a possibility, only because you said so, to existing as a reality in your world. You're manifesting, you're living it. So this new realm of possibility you declare is founded solely on your stand for that possibility. How strong do you believe what you are saying, that statement? How strongly are you believing in it? The more you believe in it, like Rudy did, the stronger, and absolutely it's going to manifest. It might take a long time because it's your consciousness, it's your belief system that's holding you back from doing it instantaneously, but it will take place. It will. So, moving ahead with that clarity, with that trust, with that power in your word. This requires making a series of bold promises and fulfilling them. Without this commitment to act, the possibility will never be transformed from a possibility to a reality, and it'll go out of existence. So we've got to take those actions. And so this morning, we take a stand, right here, right now. Take a stand. Think of what your bold statement is. To accept the impossible. Seems out of reach. Seems out of reach. That's all impossible means. It seems out of reach. And if you are really willing to accept the impossible, we only think things are impossible, and remember, it is not the great truth. We live in a universal truth, a universal realm where all things are possible. All things are possible. So our 3 declarations, real quick. Declare the possibility that what is possible is what I say is possible. 2, I declare this possibility. Who I am is the stand I take. 3, I take this stand. There is no fixed way that things should or should not be. They just are. We take our stand anyway. We consciously move our awareness into a place of really knowing that what we believe is possible. Because impossibility, as I said, is only a belief. When we tap into that inner divine energy that is within each and every one of us, waiting for us to open to the majesty, the beauty of it, the limitlessness of it, that's when all things are possible. We are beautiful creations of the one life, of the unity of all that is, the great I am, where all things are possible when we believe in ourselves. To that extent, that's when things become possible. And Dorothy, when I did the Wizard of Oz series, it's been there all the time. So, you know, we can click our heels, we can make bold statements, but it is there within each and every one of us. And so I say, believe in yourself right here, right now. So,